Welcome, friends. It's so good to be with you today. I hope you're having a blessed day wherever you are. Today, I have a short message I want to share with you. What if I told you the very thing you thought was falling apart is actually falling into place? What if the delay you're complaining about is the setup for the breakthrough God has already ordained? I want to speak directly to someone today who feels like they're stuck in the middle, between the promise and the provision, between the vision and the victory. You've been praying, you've been believing, but all you see is silence. But hear me clearly, just because you don't see God moving doesn't mean He's not working. The absence of evidence is not the absence of God. Let me remind you of Isaiah 45:3, where God says, I will give you hidden treasures, riches stored in secret places, so that you may know that I am the Lord. That means there are treasures, breakthroughs, opportunities, miracles hidden in the places you can't yet see. But will you trust Him in the dark? Think about a seed. When you plant a seed in the ground, what's the first thing that happens? It disappears. You bury it under dirt. It looks like nothing is happening. It's dark. It's silent. It seems like that seed is forgotten. But in reality, the deepest work is happening beneath the surface. The roots are forming. The seed is breaking open, because before anything rises, something has to break. Some of you feel buried right now. It feels like your prayers are going unanswered, your dreams are on hold, and you're wondering if God even hears you. But listen to me. You're not buried, you're planted. What looks like a setback is really a setup for what God is growing in you. I want you to write this down. Just because I can't see it doesn't mean God isn't doing it. Faith is not built on what you can see. It's built on what you believe. Hebrews 11:1 says, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. God isn't asking you to understand everything He's doing. He's asking you to trust that He's doing something. God's silence is not His absence. Just because He's not speaking the way you expect doesn't mean He's not present. Sometimes God is the quietest when He's doing the deepest work. Like a builder who focuses in silence while laying the foundation, God is building something strong beneath the surface of your life. You're not forgotten. The enemy wants you to believe that God has passed you by, that He's answering everyone else's prayers but yours. But let me remind you, God doesn't forget His promises. If He said it, He will do it. It might not happen on your timeline, but it will happen in His perfect time. Don't confuse waiting with wasting. Waiting is not a waste of time, it's preparation time. While you're waiting, God is working. He's developing your character, strengthening your faith, and positioning you for the next level. What feels like a delay is actually divine alignment. There's a difference between no and not yet. Sometimes what you think is God saying no is actually Him saying not yet. He's not rejecting you. He's protecting you from stepping into something before you're ready. His wait is always for your good. Faith grows in the dark. Just like a seed pushes through the dirt before it ever sees the sun, your faith is growing in the seasons when you feel hidden. God is using the dark places to deepen your roots so you can handle the weight of the blessing He's preparing. Stop rehearsing the worst-case scenario. Too often, we imagine every way things could go wrong. But what if you started imagining every way God could make it right? Faith is not rooted in fear. It's rooted in expectation. Shift your focus from what could fail to what God can fix. Your miracle is already in motion. Just because you can't see the results yet doesn't mean the miracle isn't happening. Like a tree growing underground before it breaks through the soil, God's plan is already in motion. And when it's time, it will break through in your life. Worship while you wait. Don't wait for the breakthrough to start praising God. Praise Him in the waiting room. Your worship is a weapon. It confuses the enemy and shifts the atmosphere. When you worship in the waiting, you're declaring that you trust God more than your circumstances. Every delay has a divine purpose. What feels like a setback is often God's way of setting you up. He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. Every delay is strategically moving you closer to His perfect plan, even if you don't understand it yet. The same God who started the work will finish it. Philippians 1:6 says, being confident of this, that He who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion. God doesn't abandon projects, and you are His masterpiece. If He started something in your life, He will bring it to completion. What looks like a setback is really a setup. Joseph was thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, and imprisoned. But every setback was positioning him for the palace. What the enemy meant for evil, God is using for your good. The very thing that looks like it's breaking you is the thing God will use to bless you. God's plan doesn't depend on your timeline. You might be looking at the clock, wondering if time is running out. But God doesn't operate on human schedules. He's not in a hurry, and He's never late. His timing is perfect, and when it's time for your breakthrough, nothing can stop it. Your faith moves God, not your fear. Fear might knock at your door, but it's faith that opens heaven's windows. Stop feeding your fears. Start feeding your faith. Speak life over your situation, even when it looks hopeless, because faith is the key that unlocks the impossible. God is writing a greater story. The chapter you're in right now might be painful, but it's not the end of your story. God is still writing. And the next page could be the breakthrough you've been praying for. Trust the author, because when God writes your story, it always ends in victory. So what do you do when you're in the middle? 1. Speak faith even when you feel fear. Don't let your circumstances dictate your confession. Stop saying, I'll never get out of this, and start declaring, God is making a way for me. 2. Move forward even when you don't have all the answers. Faith doesn't mean waiting until every door is open. It means stepping out, trusting that if God called you, He will carry you. 3. Remember what He's already done. If God has ever answered a prayer before, He can do it again. If He's ever opened a door before, He can open it again. Let me speak this over you today. The same God who made water flow from a rock is working in your desert season. The same God who calmed the storm with a word is speaking peace over your chaos. The same God who raised Lazarus from the dead is breathing life into your dreams, your purpose, your hope. God doesn't do halfway miracles. He didn't part the Red Sea only to leave the Israelites stranded in the middle. He brought them all the way through. And He's not bringing you this far just to abandon you now. What He started, He will finish. Trust that the same power that opened the door will carry you through it. Your waiting season is not a wasted season. Every moment you spend trusting God is building something within you. The waiting room is where warriors are formed. It's where faith grows stronger, where hope becomes unshakable, and where your spirit learns to lean on God alone. The storm doesn't cancel God's promise. Just because there's a storm doesn't mean the destination has changed. The disciples were caught in a storm, but Jesus still brought them to the other side. Your storm might be fierce, but God's promise is still intact, and He will get you to the other side. You might not see it now. You might not feel it right now, but God is working it out in the places you can't see. So don't give up in the middle. Don't quit when you feel buried. You are not forgotten. You are not forsaken. You are planted for a greater purpose. God is doing something in the unseen, and when it's time, you're going to rise. Keep believing. Keep trusting, because God is working it out, even when you can't see it. If this message spoke to you today, I want you to declare it in the comments. God is working it out for me. Share this message with someone who needs to be reminded the unseen hand of God is still moving. And remember, your faith doesn't rest on what you can see, but on the unshakable promise of a God who never stops working. God bless you. See you next time.